Welcome everybody to our BNI Talks webinar today. We're talking about LinkedIn for inviting visitors. And I thought, well, who is the best person to talk about inviting people? And that's Claudia Thompson. Claudia has been on many webinars with me before and really excited to have her on again. Claudia, you want to give us a little bit of a rundown of what you're doing for BNI these days?
Yes, it says my internet is unstable, so hopefully I'm okay. Everyone can hear me? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So what am I doing these days? What am I doing, Steve? Yeah, so I am the managing director of New York, and I'm also, and I'm also the head of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion panel for BNI US. So really excited about all the great things happening. I'm a former senior launch coach for up in New England area, live in Boston from New York. Go Nuggets, because I'm anti the heat. That's it.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, I was wondering where that came from. Although you are a Denver fan as well.
I am.
All right. So this one is all about LinkedIn for inviting visitors. And by the way, I don't know if our friend, our frequent visitor or attendee of these, Dan Daring, is on here, but Dan is the person who suggested this webinar about 2 months ago. Think I don't hear stuff? Don't think I take notes? I take notes, people. And I think this was a great idea to talk about using LinkedIn to find people for inviting. So before we even get into it, I wanted to do a quick poll and find out how often you're on LinkedIn. And for those of you driving around, if you, the question is, how often do you use LinkedIn? And the responses are daily, a few times per week, a few times per month, once in a blue moon, or not in years, or I don't have a LinkedIn account. Very curious about that. Pretty much most people, I would think, are on LinkedIn. The question is, how often are you on there? And it's kind of relevant for finding visitors, and we'll talk about that in just a second.
Very curious.
We will keep this poll open for another 10 seconds. Pretty straightforward. You don't really have to think about this one too much. Okay. Oh, look, Dan is here. Yes. Thank you, Dan, for this one. Nice. All right. So let's end the poll and share the results.
Huh.
All right. So, wow, 27% are on every day. In fact, Jamie says she's on every day and more than once. So yeah, so if you look at, we're combining, what do you got? 67%, no, 57% of people who are on either daily or a couple times a week. So that's great. Glad you're using this tool, because I think it is underrated in the world of social media for business. I see so many businesses on TikTok and on Instagram and Facebook, but all the business is on LinkedIn. So I'm glad that you're using it. Okay, so let's move into slide number 1. The one thing I wanted to say is make sure that you have updated your LinkedIn profile. It is very important. I've got 2 really strong profiles from 2 former or current future presenters, Zovid Garbushian and Tiffany Kellogg, who are have really great, well filled out profiles. And this is important. If you have a profile with no photo on it, with not much going on, and then you reach out to someone on LinkedIn to invite them to your chapter, they're going to look at this like, who is this bot that's trying to get me to sign up for something, right? It seems like totally empty. Or it's someone who says like, this person is just doing this, and I don't know that, if they want me to come to the networking group, they don't even seem like they're networking on LinkedIn. So it is important to really do this first before you do anything in terms of inviting on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I mean, it's all like what we tell you about your BNI Connect profile, right? If you want people to come towards you, have something fresh, it may be worth paying for a new headshot to keep it going. I just, have mine just revamped, and I'm going to make sure I do that at least every year, but maybe even less than that.
Mhm.
And then making sure, and if you can pay maybe the graphic designer in your chapter or someone that you know, or even going on Fiverr, one of those to do something similar with a cover photo. It just looks clean and professional. You don't have to be $1 million business, but it just makes it more credible if you do that, to Steve's point. So
Right.
definitely, yeah.
And keep in mind, if you are going to send someone like a message through LinkedIn, and you have a profile that looks like either of these, that person is going to go within and start looking at it and finding out more about you. And that's kind of like the beginning of that relationship, the business relationship that you want to start. So I can't express this enough. Get this part done. Very important.
Yep.
And you may have someone, by the way, in your chapter, graphic designer who can help you out. Maybe a business coach can help you out and fill out the resume part of it. All of those things are very important.
Exactly.
All right, so let us move on to, I have a lot up on my screen. I can actually see it now. There we go. So if you're going to invite, make a list of open seats in your chapter. Really think this through. Maybe go by your contact sphere first, because you probably know it the best. And is there like a power team person that you would really love to have? Do it that way. I'm always kind of thinking, the best way to do this is if everyone is very selfish about who they're inviting to help them, you're going to have a really great visitors day, because you're going to have a lot of different people from different professions coming in.
And can I add something, Steve? So a lot of you too, I mean, if I'm the realtor and I'm like, I really need a home inspector, that's what I need, but what is exactly the chapter need? And so this is why it's important for your contact spheres to be meeting on a regular basis, giving that list to whoever is your community builder in your chapter, so that it's fresh and everyone knows who you're inviting. Like, what does the chapter need? Not just what do I need or my sphere. So that's important to know. And then this way you can then start to roll it out. But I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. And that's a great tip for, by the way, VPs to actually put that in their report to say, these are the top seats that we're looking for to fill. And if they see that every week, it'll really going to help you think about, all right, these are the people that we should be reaching out to, whether you're on LinkedIn or just, throughout your day and meeting people in different professions.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're making your list. You're going to use the advanced search filters. There you go, from LinkedIn, which we're going to get into in just a little bit. While you're in LinkedIn, joining relevant LinkedIn groups and communities is a good idea. You never know who you're going to meet in there. There's a lot of top networkers from LinkedIn, thought leaders that pop in and out of these groups. So they're really great to do. And I would do something like, one thing that I've been joining are communities around AI, because it's such a hot topic. So I know it's a newer group and it's got a fresh group of people in it that are, working it, because some of these groups can be kind of stale. So check them out first, make sure that they're posting regularly.
Especially if you're in, like, we're in the Boston area, but I oversee New York. Those are two very transient areas. So a lot of times people have come in and out since COVID. A lot of people have changed careers. So you're right. A lot of people have stayed stagnant in some of these groups. So it is good to look to see which groups have popped up that are newer.
Yeah. And then engage with industry influencers and thought leaders. I have, in the past few months, I've been doing a ton of work on LinkedIn, and I have been just commenting. And when I comment on a popular person's post, someone who's an influencer, I'm getting a lot of likes on my comment, but I'm getting people who are in that thread who are following me just because I made a point and they got back to me. Oh, this person must know what he's talking about. Whether I did or not remains to be seen, but it was good enough to get a nice grouping of people to start following me, which is very cool.
Yeah, this is important. I mean, and you've seen this, probably a lot of you have seen this on link or Instagram, right? Where you may comment and the comment is semi-viral, or even on Twitter. And then all of a sudden you start to see some follows if you have a public page or requests to follow you. So definitely take the time, not just to sit back, but be proactive and do those engagements, because and what I love, the algorithms on LinkedIn are fantastic, because when you do comment, it notifies like everyone in that group or network, or that person's network, your network, and vice versa. So not only should you be posting, but also engaging is going to help you as well.
Right. And so you may be wondering, well, why am I doing all this stuff? I'm just looking for somebody to invite. Because the more you are connected in LinkedIn, the further your posts are going to reach. And by increasing your reach, you're going to get more people to pay attention. So if you put out a post that says something like, rather than just reaching out to them directly, but you put out a post saying, hey, we're looking, or we're interviewing, if you want to use Ivan's technique, right? We're interviewing for a seat in our chapter. Who do you know who is a great real estate attorney or plumber or graphic designer, whatever you're looking to fill? It's just going to go a lot further, and you never know who people will respond to that.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go into LinkedIn search. If I could advance the slide. There it goes. All right. So looking at this, I just looked for a business attorney in Boston. All right, let's see what comes up. So this is just using the regular LinkedIn search. No filters, no nothing. And I've got some people here. So looking at this, I'm seeing people in the greater Boston area, which is great. And these are people that I could reach out to and invite. One of the things that I love about these search results returns, even in just a simple search of the occupation and the area, is that I'm seeing how many followers they have, but I'm also seeing people that I am connected to here. So my friend Bob, I've known for many years. He's also an attorney. So you can look at it like, hey, you know what? That might be part of my pitch. You're connected to somebody that I know who is a big fan of BNI and has been in chapters on both coasts because he moved to California. And, it's just a nice icebreaker, right? And that person may turn around and say, and call that person and say, hey, tell me about BNI. I just got invited to it, right? So it's little tiny things like that that you can use to your advantage when you're connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's go beyond just the general search. Okay, so I am looking for my first connections here. That's why this one is clicked. These are all drop downs that you can do by location, by company that they're in, lots of different filters. So these are my first connections, and these are all people who come up under business attorney. Wow, 44. I know a lot of attorneys. That's cool. And so as I'm looking at this list, I'm thinking, all right, who can I invite? Who's not already in BNI? Because a lot of my connections are BNI connections, right? So this is my friend Tracy Engel, who I met on the day that I joined BNI in 2002. She was my director back then. Mark is great. All of these people are good, but I'm obviously going to look at who's not in BNI right now, but I may also reach out to those people that I know who are my first contacts and say, hey, Tracy, hey, Mark, who do you know that does what you do that can benefit from BNI because they've both been in BNI, right? So it's kind of a different way of getting around it to where you want to be, but I think it can be really helpful that way, especially if they're willing to back you up and say, hey, this is a good idea. Right.
So yeah, I mean, in addition to this, I spent a Sunday. So when I got, so I'm born and raised in New York, but I lived in Boston for 17 years. So when I took over managing the region, I went to my network, to my connections in the different regions, and I would go to the person's page and look up their first and second connections as well, and then say, hey, is this okay? Or who is this person? And see how many mutual people we had as well. So really take the time to see who specifically is connected, who are they connected to, and if they can help you in finding some folks, for your chapter.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So let's move down. Now I've changed it to second connections. By the way, this number 1 just means that I have one filter clicked off. I could have clicked first and second connections for that filter, and it would have a number 2 in that circle. Okay. Here's these people. I had to follow this woman because she keeps coming up first. Anita Roman. So I just recently followed her as I was putting this together.
She's great. Yeah.
I assume that you know her because Claudia knows everybody, by the way, if you're aware of this. It's just assumed. And the other people that are here, I don't know them all. I've heard of some, but I do know Richard Hawk. And so I might reach out to him about this attorney here to see if he's interested, because he's got a specialty in business immigration, which is, I think, could be very cool. It seems like a unique position there, right? So I think all of those things are important to use. All right, so now I just bumped to the next slide. And you'll see locations. I clicked Greater Boston here, but they're going to give you different locations that you can use, but you can put in a location as well. So if you want it to be something specific, like my former chapter was in Framingham, so I might want to put Framingham, Massachusetts, or I might want to do something very specific, like maybe a community inside of Boston, like Jamaica Plain or something like that.
Back Bay.
So yeah, Back Bay is another great one. So those are just different ways of you kind of figuring out how you're going to narrow it down, especially if you are in a chapter that is in a kind of a very specific place in the city, or if you're, the only game in town and there's nothing around you but cows, depending on where you are, except for this one city, do it that way. So however specific you need to get, please do, because that's going to help you out with your results.
Right.
Okay. So now I've got a few things clicked here, right? I've got my second connections. I've got Greater Boston, current company. So you can do that as well. You can find people who work for a certain law firm if you want. That's another cool thing that you can do. And I highlighted this because this is another drop down within all filters, and that's by people. So you can it's going to do all of these things first at the top, the connections, the location, the companies, but it's also going to go by education, like which schools they graduated from, just in case you've got an alum that you can reach out to, the service categories that are broken down specifically within law. And
I've done that too. I mean, so here in Boston, Suffolk Law, most of the attorneys that are here come from Suffolk Law School. So they have a massive alumni network. And when, Steve and I, back in the old days, when we were launching chapters in Boston, a lot of our attorneys would come from that. So even checking based off of school, if there's a school in your area that a lot of the attorneys come from, let's say, that would be another really great opportunity for you, because you might know some of the attorneys that are alumni as well, to connect with a certain person.
Absolutely. And I think that's just kind of the smartest way of going about it. Inviting is a lot sometimes when you've got a big event coming up and you're like, I don't even know where to begin with this. This is a good way to do it. And, filtering down and narrowing in this way is always a great approach. Right? Randy's asking, are you going to message, email, or call? Randy, let us get to that point.
Andy.
You're like reading ahead. You're like a psychic.
Please.
So here, Randy. Yes. Are you going to LinkedIn, email, text, letter, or phone call? It depends. It depends on if you know these people well. I am not going to text somebody off the top of my head because I went to their website and looked up their phone number and started texting. That's, we don't want to stalk people here. We're trying to.
I do that, but that's different. But yeah, so I think it depends. Some people say this is generational, but truly, I mean, it really doesn't matter, because if we went based off of generation, I would prefer email, but I actually prefer text. So I think you have to kind of get a sense. I find that text, you're getting a lot of texts now, if you notice. And so like a lot of people, because it's more direct, most people will check their text messages. So if it's not just like, word vomit and sending someone a text, but if you're just simply like, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn, or checked out your website, I'd love to be able to connect with you. But something simple regardless, and we'll talk about some of those tips later, but it really just depends. And I think, again, leaving it limited to check in with someone for a next step rather than vomiting is going to make a massive difference.
Yeah. I mean, you could connect right through LinkedIn. The one thing that I worry about, though, is connecting directly through LinkedIn and then immediately inviting them to your chapter before they even know who you are. Right. So maybe if you think this is someone worth, spending some time with, set up a one-to-one, right?
But yeah, and it doesn't have to be in person. It doesn't have to be. A lot of times, if you think about when you're trying to get together with a friend and meet up in person these days, it's just like, it won't happen till August, right? So you want to think would it make sense for us to just hop on a Zoom if you have to, but try to get a next touch. Especially if your relationship is not non-existent and you're trying to get connected.
Right. So all of these are valid ways of reaching out to people, but it depends on, first off, what you're most comfortable doing. There are some people who still believe in the old system of doing a formal letter in an envelope because it seems like it's important. And how many letters do you actually get and open? That's cool. It's not my thing, but I know that there are a lot of people who love this system and they swear by it. It's worked for them for years and it still works. To me, I'm more of an email or LinkedIn person. Claudia likes a text. I don't mind a text, but after I've connected with them. But
Right.
it all depends on what you're comfortable doing. And I think that because you don't want it to seem fake or forced, you want it to seem like a genuine outreach to say, hey, I've got a really great opportunity for you to meet someone in my chapter. Why don't you come visit?
And I will say, I mean, and everyone, feel free if you're in the chat. I mean, how many of you are getting LinkedIn solicitations these days? I haven't seen
I
this
am.
flurry
Wow.
in ever, and I think it's been every now and then it would be occasional. So
Mhm.
you don't want to be lost in that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that makes sense, right? So you want to be able to stand out. And if you're saying less, so I'll browse. So I don't even check them half the time now, and I'll browse them. I'll have some times. So like I said, you want to be able to be distinct and stand apart. And maybe I do sometimes if someone does text me or finds my email and sends me a message outside of LinkedIn, I may go to LinkedIn to see who I'm connected with and how credible they are. So that's why all of that other the stuff that we said matters. And you don't want to just start, like I said, just giving them pages of something about about your business or about BNI. You want to just be able to say, let's get a next step. I'd love to get some coffee, or maybe we can hop on a Zoom.
Yeah. The one thing that I never do, by the way, is when LinkedIn gives you a little intro sentence to use, I always use my own words just because I don't want it to look like everyone else's that is in it. People are just connecting just to connect and for no other reason. I think it's really important to really be strategic about how you're communicating right out of the gate, the minute that you're making the first contact with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's see. Next, okay, let's talk about what not to say, right? Because we don't want to, and I've kind of seen this. I've been invited to BNI by people who didn't know that I have been in BNI forever. And sometimes it comes across like this. We would really love to have you at our chapter. It's, please come. We've got, coffee and food. No one's going to
No,
bed
don't do
for
this.
things, right? Right. You
Yes.
have to be a little bit more strategic about this stuff. And Claudia, I'm sure you've seen this kind of stuff. You probably teach people to kind of not do this when you're doing your lunch stuff.
That's correct. Yes. You don't want to beg people, because at the bottom line, kind of what we pointed to before about what Ivan says about inviting people to look at the possibility of your meeting. You don't want to beg and say, we need people. We only have 7 members.
Mhm.
Or we've been desperate to, it might be like, we've been having a lot of requests for a plumber. And so we've really been making sure we pick the right one, using different language that has them know that this is an opportunity that is unique is going to make a huge difference. So I think be careful in how you are making the request.
Yeah.
And again, while we have been looking, really long and hard for a realtor, we really want to find the best realtor. So that's a really important.
Yeah. All right. So now that we know what not to say,
Yes.
let us.
It was an SML nod. I got
Yeah,
you.
I know, right? That was coincidence.
Yeah.
So so the reason I wanted Claudia on here is to really kind of go over all of her best tips for inviting, because Claudia invites people like I've never seen before. We were putting a chapter together once a couple of years ago, and I'm like, man, we need like 3 more people to get this thing launched. And like that afternoon, there they were. So yeah. So Claudia, why don't you kind of go through this list and add anything else that you want to?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I mean, like I said before, like it's really important to set your intention and know what your plan is. You don't want to just be blasting everyone, because we get that, right? When you get an email or a request, that it is very clear that it is, sort of like a desperate attempt, or they're going to just talk about their business, or talk about something because they need something. So set the intention of what it is in advance in your head so that you know that you walk away with that's a takeaway that you have after that meeting, right? And be concise. So if you are going to send something, like I said, sometimes you get one shot in LinkedIn. I like when someone says, "Hi, Claudia," and I'm like, "Oh, did I meet them out? Did I see them on a presentation?" And then they start with, "Is your data solutions?" And then they start, they've lost me, right? So you want to make sure that you are being as concise as possible and just very clearly and simple. And sometimes it may not be just like, "Hey, we need a photographer. Can you come to my meeting?" That is concise. However, that is not building a relationship, right? So you want to start with like, "How is business?" Right? That kind of welcome. "Hey, I'd love to learn more about your business. I'm very intrigued. I see that we have a few mutual connections. Would love to learn more about your business and how we can possibly mutually help each other." Right? Just something of in the sense of the spirit is that I'm here to help you. I'm reaching out because I think that we could have a good opportunity of building a mutual beneficial relationship, right? But if you ask them first, they're going to know, and who doesn't like to talk about their business? So if you're genuinely asking them about that, they're going to be able to respond and be more excited. They're going to be more receptive to accepting your invitation, right? Don't oversell BNI. Don't oversell anything, but please don't oversell BNI, right? It's just wacky. Don't oversell and tell, send them links and copy stuff from the website. Please, I request that you don't do that. You have some really great coaches and visitor hosts who are trained on how to talk about BNI after the fact, but you yourself can talk about, right? We have the 3+1. +1 is telling stories. When you're meeting with them, you can start talking about BNI, but don't overdo it in that first initial outreach. And then, of course, like I said, setting up that meeting. If you put in the email, would love to schedule, not just like, "Hey, I want to know about your business. Thanks." Have a time in mind or 2 times in mind and let them know, "I would love to be able to connect with you. Do you have time for coffee or tea?" I'm a tea person, so I have to throw that in there. Sometime in the next week. Yeah. Or, can we jump on a Zoom? I'd love to just, if it's tough for you to get out, maybe we can jump on a Zoom. Right. And that way you let people know, because you don't know what people's preference is and their time constraints. And then, talk about meeting people and not attending a meeting. So Steve, I know that you're a really great copywriter and you're into marketing. I have some folks in my chapter who would love to connect, right? They do branding, but not so much content. And I would love for you to be able to connect with them. Is it possible? Actually, we meet every Tuesday. So would it be possible for you to actually come in and connect? Like, talk about that, like a connection to people and the possibility of building, relationships together. Shout out to the tea drinkers in the chat. I love it.
Yeah.
So think about that, like building. I used to, when we're now on a 100% virtual chapter, but when we were in a 100% in-person chapter, and we meet pretty early, Steve knows, I would have people come meet me 6 a.m. before my meeting started, so that if we wanted to do that meetup, we would do that before or after, depending, right? And then from there, it's like, yeah, then you can just stay for my meeting if that works, right? And you can do this in person or for a Zoom. But this is that's a really great opportunity because they were excited about it. I would tell them about a couple of people that I thought they would be sync with well, and that got them excited. Okay. And then again, have a follow-up as part of that plan in the beginning. Have in mind, when is the next time we should connect? Does it make sense for us to connect in a week from now or next month, and any action items that you talked about? So those are the things that you want to do, and to make sure that you're inviting thoughtfully and not just overwhelming anyone.
Yeah, I love the idea of actually doing a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting with someone who's interested in coming, but maybe needs a little bit more information, or they never heard of BNI before, which is always amazing to me that people still have not ever heard of BNI. But I get it; it's still kind of a word of mouth thing, or they may be new in business or whatever. To kind of really just get them and sit down with them and talk about the possibilities, right, of networking and meeting the people who are going to bring you referrals, rather than doing it the opposite way, which was, here's how much it costs. When you're leading off with that, people don't see the value. They only see a number, right? And
Mhm.
then it's your job to justify that all the time. The best thing to do is just invite them to the meeting, let the meeting sell itself, and then let them make that decision. See if it's right for them.
Yeah, and I think you're all inviting to make sure that they join, right? There's some sort of pressure in that. And or you're worried about not pressuring them. It's like it's either. And it's just to really, if you invite them for the opportunity to connect, but letting them know there will be an opportunity for them to look at this moving forward, so that they could be the exclusive person in that profession in your chapter. But there's no pressure. At the very least, I'd love for you to just come meet some people. It's totally free for you to attend 1 time, 2 times, just so you can get connected. But then that meeting will sell itself. The people will sell itself. And the more that you've prepped them in advance, it's an easier close. It's like effortless because they've already gotten to know some folks. You've connected them with people in advance. They've met with you. They feel really comfortable, and then they move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is, it's so much better. I think a lot of times people have a big list and they run down this list of names and someone's like, oh, I don't know. And they just move on to the next person and the next person. And they go so fast that they don't give the person enough time to actually kind of figure out if this is right for them or not. So taking it down a little bit, so a little bit slower in your approach can be great. But I do agree with not spending too much time with one person. Sometimes you think this is going to be like the best person and you just keep inviting and inviting and inviting. And then the day your visitor day comes and they don't show up because they were never going to come in the first place. You have to kind of let it go and move on to other people as well.
Yeah, don't give yourself too much time. Don't try to like give them business so that then they join. There's nothing that they have that holds them to like, well, wow, if there's a possibility of getting some business, that would be really cool. But you don't have to oversell it. Like I said, you don't have to overly convince anyone. If they see the value, they see the value. And the people in your group and the way that BNI is run is what's going to sell it.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's the kind of the best way to do it. But I think that sometimes in our frenzy to get as many people to our visitor day, we're not really thinking about the end result so much as getting through the list of people that you work so hard to develop. And I get that, you do spend a lot of time prospecting sometimes, but it is important to make sure that you're seeing it through the eyes of the person that you're in contact with.
Yes.
Right. So it makes sense for you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump into, do we have any questions for Claudia since she can answer anything related to these? Courtney says, by the way, if they see the value, they are the right person for your chapter. If they don't, they may not be right for you. Agreed. Sometimes you just gotta move on, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of other people out there, as we saw in that LinkedIn search. And I think that, doing that, by the way, going back to your LinkedIn search and really coming up with some names, you may be able to help out other people in your chapter. Like, for example, let's say you're in the financial sphere, but the marketing sphere needs a web designer. Help them out. Come up with some names for them and let them get in touch. It's always a great way of helping out the other people. It's your giver's game for the week, right? Invite someone who's not in your sphere to your chapter as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think these are all really great. And Cheyenne said in the chat, this can be applicable to your businesses, especially for those of us who have sales backgrounds. A lot of these tips that I've been training for over the years has really just come from my sales experience. And how I've built relationships was really not about trying to, I used to sell office equipment. I wasn't pushing copiers, right? But people wanted, after getting to build a relationship and felt comfortable with me, they would buy whatever I was selling, right? So it didn't matter and it didn't make a difference. So this is how you start building the relationships. It starts now with some of these touches. So keep in mind, it's like your first touch is the first impression, and it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. All right. I think we are at the end. That went fast.
Yes.
Thank you all for being on today. This was a good one. And I hope that if anyone has any questions, please reach out to Claudia or me, and our emails are just our names at bni.com, or connect with us on LinkedIn, since this was a LinkedIn webinar.
Yes.
Hey, guess what? Next week, we've got one that we are sure is going to sell out. Everyone is very curious about this one. This is an intro to ANI. We're going to do 3 AI webinars with 3 different categories, one about this, one about using it in BNI, and one for maybe some imagery and the other things that AI can do beyond ChatGPT. And but I think that this is one that is very
This is
controversial.
gonna be a good one, yeah.
And we're doing
Sure.
pros and cons on this one.
Yeah,
So check your email that we sent yesterday with the reminder, and we'll send out another one next week. We hope to have you on. We'll see you then. Everyone, give yourselves a CEU. Thanks for being here, Claudia.
absolutely.